I just got three things to say. God bless our troops. God bless America. And gentlemen, start your engine!
Are you fucking shitting me? Dude, how long you been racing? You've been racing 800 fucking years, you stupid fuck.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Work Area podcast. Today, we've got another guest in studio in Brodie Moller, the crew chief of the Williamson Motorsports W3. Brodie, how are you?
Good, thanks, mate. Thank you for inviting me on. I watched your episode last week with Chad and think it's a really cool thing you're doing and really excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's going all right, actually. I sort of had some numbers in my head, what I thought would be good, and they've exceeded them a little bit. I've spoken to a couple of other people that host podcasts, and the numbers are better than what I thought. But yeah, all things take time, and it will eventually sort it out. So, no, mate, cheers for coming on. It's obviously we're a untried little podcast here, and I appreciate you coming on and having a chat.
No, mate, I think it's good what you're doing. There's nothing really like it in WA terms. So, no, I think it's a really cool thing you're doing, and there's definitely room for it in the sport.
Yeah, like in the first podcast, I spoke about how I'd burn through the content like of the previous week in like 2 days.
Yeah.
And then I've got the rest of the week, usually Monday, Tuesday, I've watched all my YouTube and that. And then when I'm fiddling around in the shed, there was nothing on, and it just sort of started marinating my mind. And I thought, could I do it? I don't know. But, mate, we're in here, we're winging it. We've showed you around the office. Yeah, we've talked through what to expect, but I will just get into it. First question that I have for you, mate, is, in your words, what is a crew chief?
I guess I could change it. Could I say what a good crew chief is?
Yeah, mate. It's you're running the show, mate. You do whatever you want.
I guess a good crew chief is someone who can take control of a team and take control of a driver, I guess, and make it successful and make it look the part. And, I think a good crew chief takes, you got to be able to drive your rig up and down the road, and obviously have your truck license and be able to get your stuff to each track. And then I think being able to build your own shocks is a big thing. I think you got to be able to build your own shocks to be a good crew chief, and then, and just make sure your stuff's presentable and you're really good with your sponsors. That's another really, really key part to this is being good with sponsors and, and being able to keep the costs down for your car owners and get along good with your driver and make him be at his best and make your crew be at their best. And yeah, and hopefully you be successful.
And so it just sounds like everything.
Yeah, it's pretty much everything, mate. I mean, in my case, I'm really fortunate to have a good crew guy in Nathan who makes my job a lot easier, and then obviously Carl and Callum who make my job much easier. And
yep.
But yeah, just being able to do most things, it's not easy. I think there's a lot of good crew chiefs out there who aren't recognised and do a really good job. It's tough.
I haven't noted to speak about it later, but it's a good opportunity now that you bring it up. I think that crew chiefs do need to be presented a lot better by the Speedway thing, but I have it written here that I actually think Callum does a really good job at always recognising you. Like, I don't know anyone in the sprint cars or anything, but I always knew you because of how he speaks about you on the podium or after qualifying or whatever. He always is willing and always recognising the effort and the stuff that you put in. And if some other drivers, and I'm sure they all do, but in the moment when they're on the podium and stuff like that, probably slips their mind. But I'd always think that Callum does a really good job at acknowledging your efforts and what you put into the team and the car.
Yeah, you're definitely right, mate. He's always been like that with me, and I don't think I think that just reflects on Callum as a person. I guess he's just, he's the most selfless person you'll meet, and, he's all about helping other people, and, he's just probably the only person in the whole world that I've never heard him say a bad word about anyone. I think you could punch him in the face and he'd still call you a good guy. That just reflects on the person he is. But yeah, you're definitely right. I think there's obviously the drivers do a really good job. They're obviously very talented at what they do, but there's also a lot of talented crew chiefs out there who need to be recognised for what they do. And
Yeah, and it seems to be more prevalent within WA itself that there is more actual crew chiefs coming on board.
yeah, I think, I could be wrong, but I think there's 8 or 9 full-time crew chiefs just in WA, which is probably more than any other state, which is,
Yeah, that's epic.
it's really cool.
Just with that, when you're speaking about knowing how to build shocks, I Googled, I YouTubed your name, and two videos that I watched came up. There was like the little front end challenge that Chaz did, I think, on his YouTube channel. That was a really impressive film clip. I was laughing my head off
That
in
was a
here.
little side bet with him.
Yeah, I've seen that. But then the other video was when you're building a shock inside the trailer. That was really eye opening. That was an awesome little video for me, just to see the intricacies somewhat of what goes into it, and really impressive. How many shocks do you reckon you would have built?
Oh, mate, I wouldn't even know. It'd be a pretty big number, I think. I built. Obviously, I was fortunate enough to be sent to America by Buzz. Obviously, working at RPM at the time,
Yep.
we were, and he sent me to America to work with Factory Kane, Willie Kane. It's on 90% of sprint cars in the across the world, and working with them for 3 weeks, and they taught me a lot, and then took it back here, and we started a little deal at RPM here, which really took off. It really did, and it was good. Got to build a lot of shocks in that short amount of time, and then obviously kind of went off and did my own thing with Callum, and obviously fortunate enough to be able to know how to build our own shocks and tweak them and just do stuff to them that we want to do. And whenever I got everything available in our trailer, Callum and Carl have provided me with everything I possibly need to do it. And mate, I've built a lot.
Yeah, it looked like that just when you go through the drawers and things like that. You just the knowledge that you seem to possess already, it was seriously impressive to watch, and knowing that as a driver, I would assume that Callum could just tell you that I feel like the car's doing this, and then you know whether that's available within the adjustment itself on the shocks, or whether or not you need to build a new one. How much do you reckon it is learning from Willie Kane and that, but then also how much just trial by error, actually doing it yourself, figuring it out, getting feedback?
Yeah, it's obviously definitely a bit of both. I've just been very fortunate enough in my short career already to be mentored by some really, really smart people and some really big names in the sport, and obviously working under Kim Buswell for 6-7 years. It might actually be longer. It might be 8 years. Working under him for that amount of time was just it was game changing, and the things he taught me, not even to do with racing, the things he taught me away from racing just helped me so much in life and obviously through racing. And then then other people like you say, going to America and learning off Willie Kane. He's a bit of a mad scientist, but he's probably one of the smartest people out there, and just working alongside people like James McFadden. He's obviously one of the best drivers in the world, and just listening to his feedback that he'd give Buzz, and just the ideas they'd bounce off each other when we're racing. You just kind of you take all that in, and when you're young, you try to be a sponge and take everything in and take all the knowledge you can in, and then just the people and good people in the sport, mate, taught me, and just built the knowledge up a little bit. Not saying I know a lot, but I'd like to think I know a little bit. And
I was gonna introduce you as like WA's like young, up and coming or whatever. Then I was like, you're probably, even though you are young, you're not up and coming. You're pretty established. You've been with Callum for what, 3 seasons? 4 seasons?
Nah, less than that, mate.
Right.
I've only been full time with Callum for just over a year now.
Okay,
so
really?
I done last season with him, obviously, and then the season before, I kind of started halfway through the season.
Yeah, okay.
So couldn't really, it's hard starting halfway through the season with someone, but once we got a full season under our belts and obviously started knowing what each other likes and how we do things, we really took off, and he's done such a good job. People probably don't realize, but he's changed so much as a driver in the last year and a bit, and his feedback's got so much better. Like, he can come off the track now and say, I need this, I need that, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that. Where 3 years ago, he'd come off the track and just say, I don't know. Nah, he's improved so much.
So what got you into Speedway? Like, is it a family thing? Was it luck? How'd you get involved?
Yeah, I'd kind of always been around it, mate. My dad worked on cars when he was younger and was always friends with Buzzy. And I kind of just sat on the hill and watched sprint car racing till I was 15 with my granddad on the hill. Just go down to Perth every week and yeah, like I say, just sit on the hill and wasn't really a part of it. And I couldn't even tell you one thing about him. I wouldn't even know how to mount a tire back in them days. And then my brother actually got sick. And then Buzz was nice enough and caring enough to kind of take me under his wing. And he was obviously good friends with Dad at the time. And yeah, he took me under his wing. And then all of a sudden I was driving my bike from school to the workshop after school every day and learning off him. And yeah, just fully into it, which I remember Buzz telling me when I was young, you don't want to be doing this stuff. It's not good for you. And yeah, I clearly didn't listen and kept going to the workshop every day. And yeah, Mum would drop me off, Nana would drop me off, whatever, and just find my way to the workshop somehow. And then started going racing with them and just got hooked, mate, as we all do.
Yeah, try and tell a kid, stay away from a sprint car workshop. And whose workshop was that at the time?
It was Luch Monty's workshop.
Yeah, so it's not Joe Blow down there with an open trailer or whatever, one of the best teams Australia's probably ever produced, and he's trying to tell you, oh, you don't want to be doing this. Like fuck, mate, you'd want to be in there every day, clean and doing it with scraping mud.
Yeah, I was doing anything I could, and I was really lucky to obviously, most people have got to start at the bottom, and work their way up, and I was really fortunate enough to kind of land on my feet and start at the top, and just had to work really hard at it.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be luck. Like, I'm sure if you're an absolute spanner that couldn't do anything and didn't show any promise, then like these sprint car teams are professional, they wouldn't let you near a car. So you must have showed some talent and some want pretty early for the boys to look after you. And like you said, Buzzy's done good and let you cut your teeth on one of the best sprint car teams in Australia. So that's just such a leg up for you early, and you're not learning just from anyone, you're learning from the best. So the habits that you would have developed early are the best habits, and just a massive springboard into launching into what you're doing now, I guess.
Yeah, definitely, mate. I think it just, when I first started, you kind of learn when to speak, when not to speak, what to say, when to shut up, when to just listen. And yeah, I think that's what a lot of young people probably struggle with these days in our sport is, they do their 3 or 4 years, win a race or two or whatever, and start thinking they're all that. But you soon get caught out, and these older guys soon let you know that you don't know all of it. So you gotta kind of just shut up and just listen, and like I said, be a sponge and just absorb everything and listen to the people who've done it forever. And because you think you know more than them, and then they soon prove you wrong. So just you know when to speak and when not to.
And what's your first job scraping mud? What was the first sort of stuff you started cutting your teeth on?
My first job was, it's actually really, really funny. My first job was actually making Buzz coffees. Yeah, I was kind of just I think I was 14, 15, just a young kid, don't really know much, what I mean? And he kind of, his first job for me was to make him coffees every day. And I didn't know how to make a coffee, but he soon taught me. And that was my first job. And then, obviously started evolving from there. There was actually, Buzz was obviously full-time, and then they had another full-time guy, Raymond Hornby, who worked at the time, and he kind of just took me under his wing as well and taught me, he was the crew guy, the tyre guy per se, and he kind of taught me all about tyres and that. And then he actually left. This was probably 6 months in to me being there. He actually left to work on V8 supercars and work on a supercar team. And, I kind of got taught a little bit, but I still didn't know how to groove a tyre I think I knew how to mount them, but not groove them or anything. And he had to leave, and then it was just me and Buzz, and we're going to Darwin. And I remember him telling me, "Oh, can you groove that tyre?" And I was like, "I don't even know how to groove a tyre." Buzz, like, I've never been taught. And so he was teaching me how to groove tyres 6 months in, and me and him actually went up to Darwin, just us two with James, and we won 4 out of 4 nights there, which was pretty cool. It was probably pretty cool for Buzz, just obviously being with this young kid who doesn't know anything, and it was good times, mate, really good times.
Because then Buzz not just has to worry about what he's doing, he's got to also worry about what you're doing, probably double check everything that you're doing, like, and high stakes, I'll speak about it a bit later, but like it's not a joke when you're working on these cars, because these boys are banging down that fence at massive speeds. Like there's high stakes involved with it, in there.
Yeah, definitely. And that was one thing he always drilled into my head was, there's our mate in that car, so you got to make sure everything's tight, everything's 100%, because it's no joke. There's obviously people that lose their life in this sport, and that's our mate in that car, so we want to make sure.
Yeah, that's actually
100%.
Really resonated with me. It's not like, we got to make this car safe. Like that saying, that's our mate in that car. That actually rings really true. I like that.
Yeah, that's one thing I try. My crew guy now, Nathan, he's really good actually, but that's one thing I kind of always drill into his head too, is just, that's, Callum's in that car. He's our best mate. We got to make sure we're on the ball too, to make sure he's safe and he can go back to his family at the end of the night.
So you cut your teeth at Monty Motorsports, RPM, and then when you just talk me through what it was like when you finally got that phone call from Williamson Motorsports. I'm not sure if is it Carl, or is it Callum? Like the phone call where you finally got told, yep, you're coming on board. What was that like?
It was actually, so I was obviously working here at the time, and I don't know if Callum was struggling, but I think he was just, I think they wanted to take it to the next level, and they were obviously pretty close with Buzz at the time. And I think Carl and Buzz had a chat and just said, Carl said to Buzz, how do we take our racing to the next level? And Buzz said, look, to be at that next level, you need a full-time guy. And I was obviously just building shocks at the time, not really, obviously wanted to get back to racing. Me and Buzz both kind of stepped out of racing for a year or two, and, you get itchy and you go down the racetrack and just want to work on them and want to win. So yeah, him and Carl had a chat, and I guess Buzz told him, look, you can take Brodie if you want, and kind of, and he'd be a full-time guy. So they actually had their cars out of RPM here, and so I kind of worked on their stuff after hours, and maybe 1 or 2 days a week when I could, just obviously trying to deal with the shocks as well. It was difficult. So yeah, that's kind of how that all went down, and then it got to a point where I probably need to be all in on one or the other, and Callum offered me a full-time deal, just, going, but he was going to get a workshop and move and just, put all my eggs in one basket, and that's what I did.
This seems crazy. Was it a bit like seriously, you want to pay me to work on your car, like full-time, that's it?
Yeah, it definitely was crazy, mate. I was nervous when I first started, but I kind of wasn't, because I knew I had obviously Buzz in my corner. I knew he was going to give me advice and help me with it all. And yeah, I remember I went to the races for the first time, and Buzz had to go over Easter or something. He was working with James, and it was like Boxing Day, and I was nervous that day. I remember we were rolling out for qualifying. We're 8th quick out of 9 in our group. And I was like, oh, this is kind of eye-opening.
Yeah, that would have been hectic finally, because then almost you prior to that you would have been under Buzzy's umbrella somewhat, a little bit, but you probably were making the exact same decisions as what you were, but when that responsibility falls on you and you alone, it's just so different. Hey,
it definitely is. I kind of realized that really quickly. The last few years at Monty Motorsports, I felt like I was doing a lot of it, because the crew chiefs, work-wise, they don't do a lot of it, but obviously brain-wise and thinking they do. And you think, oh, I'm doing just as much as Buzz here. I mean, I could be doing what he's doing, and then you get the chance. You go from a crew guy to a crew chief, and you're like, wow, it's not just working hard. It's you got to think about it, and all the pressures on you, and you're just constantly thinking, constantly watching the racetrack, constantly watching what your driver's doing. It's definitely the next level, and it's definitely an eye-opener when you get there.
It's easy to have an opinion, and it's somewhat like social media. Everyone can throw a comment in there and say, you should have done this, you should have done that. And then, we've all been in situations where it's like that. But then that same opinion, if it goes wrong and then it comes back to being your fault or it's so, the weight of that is so heavy. And I imagine, how old were you when you first started doing it, you reckon?
With Callum, when I think I was 20.
Yeah, so 20 years old, in charge of I don't know if they call them that, but I think that professional motorsports team, 20, crew chief, the decisions are on you, they're looking to you.
Yep.
Would have been a hectic time. Buzzy's over East, Boxing Day, huge crowd.
And I feel like everything kind of comes back on the crew chief. You know what I mean? Like I always got taught this saying: when you win, it's a driver; when you lose, it's a crew chief. You know,
Yeah.
it's just
That's
it always
life.
comes back down to them. It's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah. I'm just sort of smiling inside and outside, but just trying to put myself in that position. Like, yeah, easy to say, oh, you should have done this, let's do this. And then that moment that it's actually used, it would have been hectic. But you're obviously used to that now?
Yeah, kind of. I wouldn't say used to it. Still, racing in WA at the moment is really hard, mate. There's a lot of pressure. You know, there's the two car at the moment, the Creaky Motorsports. They're a really good team, and they're really setting the benchmark at the moment. And, you know, it's definitely a lot of pressure trying to keep up with them and trying to make sure you're always on the ball, and you want to go off and try different things, but then you kind of get caught out, so you go back to what you know. And yeah, it's just everyone's looking for that next thing and that edge, and it's brutal over here at the moment, mate. But it's the place to race.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I spoke about it in the first one, and like one of the Maddington Toyota video clips with Ryan Cricky spoke about it's probably the third best series in the world.
Definitely, it definitely is 100%. I mean, just what they've done this year with obviously the high limit deal and the money they're starting to pay. I think that's the biggest thing. And, you know, costs are going up. Everything, diesel costs more, tires cost more, insurance costs more, engines cost more, everything costs more. And the prize money kind of hasn't gone up for the last 5 years, but now it's starting to. And these guys this series is the ones that are putting that bigger money up and making the bigger races.
So we'll speak about like a race night later on, but what I'm interested to know is, so the trailer gets packed up and you get back to the workshop. What's this? Just you haven't trashed the car or anything. You've put it back in straight. What's the next week look like for you in terms of like maintenance? Like, what do you actually do to the car? You wash it, but in terms of like maintenance, you don't have to give away any secrets or anything like that. But how much? And I guess I want to know, and I'm assuming most people want to know, is how much are you doing in the car? Like how intricate and how involved is the maintenance schedule, like week to week?
Well, I'll use this week as an example. This week was a little bit different. So obviously at the Western Annapolis, we ran and we probably, to be honest, mate, we probably weren't that good. You know what I mean? The two car was really good and Ryan Newton was really good. So we struggled early with a full fuel load. So, you know, you think about, as a crew chief, you think about that from when the checkered flag drops to the next time you're looking at your car. And I rolled it out Monday after the races, and I thought, I'm going to fill this thing full of fuel and just measure stuff and just look at stuff, because we're no good at the start of the race when we're full of fuel. So I spent the whole Monday just measuring and just changing bars and just changing ride heights and trying to work out why we're better at the end of the race and why we suck at the start of the race. And so that's it's kind of what this week's kind of been, is just trying to be better and trying to improve and just try to catch that two car. They're really good at the moment. And, you know, so Monday was that, and then Tuesday is just, you know, service the engine, service the car. When you're a full-time crew chief, you got to make sure everything's right, you know what I mean? Because it's your job. You're getting paid to do it. So you got to go through every little nut and bolt, service, grease the bars, grease the ball, you know, obviously go over the motor, make sure that's fine, change oil if you have to. And this week I've just been getting ready for Adelaide, because we leave for Adelaide Monday morning to go race that Adelaide 500 race. So
yeah, that looks epic. Have you seen those little videos so far?
Yeah, I've seen that. I'm a little bit nervous, to be honest. Yeah, they got some work to do. The track's only just getting built now.
No, there's trees like over the track. It looks like the edge, and it's just a road base at the moment. It's like hard up against like a stand.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, geez.
Yeah, I'm actually worried about the safety side of things, but they'll work it out. They know what they're doing. There's obviously got the right people in the right places. So, but yeah, just, you know, get the trailer ready, load it up with spares, make sure all the spare front ends, rear ends are bled, make sure we have at least one of everything, if not two of everything. You know, we're going to put a spare car upstairs, and yeah, just make sure your stuff's ready for the road and ready for these big races coming up, mate.
So would you say you check like literally every nut and bolt on the car week to week?
Oh, pretty close to it. Yeah, I'd say you're very close to it. You know, you just, especially with the way that, you know, obviously the points racing this year is going to be really tight, so you can't afford to drop out of any race.
Yeah, you can't miss one.
That's my biggest thing, is having no DNF. So if we can go the whole year without having a DNF, I'll be more than happy. So you always got to make sure your stuff's 100%.
When you do you order the parts and all that sort of stuff?
Yep.
What is your favourite like new part to get? Like for me, new tyres are like the coolest thing in the world for me. Like I barely don't even want to like push it out the shed, but new tyres for me, I think are the sickest thing ever, even though you just blitz them straight away. But what's your favourite new part to get or put on?
Oh, mate, it's probably the more expensive stuff, but no, I try not to get caught up in it too much. When I was younger, I used to get caught up in that stuff, but you got to, you kind of just got to, it's like new shoes. You just got to put them on and just run them out, you know what I mean?
Get them dirty straight away.
But nah, obviously new motors are cool, and you always hate putting a new wing on. You're like, damn it.
Yeah.
Usually when you put a new wing on, you junk it first night out. That's just the way it goes. But all the titanium stuff we run these days is pretty nice, and the way they machine stuff, and obviously all the billet stuff's, it's nice to order.
Yeah, well, I was amazed. Got told recently, just like the fuel tanks, those ATL fuel tanks, how much they are.
Yeah, they're poison at the moment, mate. You junk a fuel tank, you're in $8,000 almost.
Yeah. Is it true that they're like an aeronautical company and they're like fighter pilot?
Yeah,
sort of
I'm
parts?
pretty sure, mate. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how they
Crazy. And then the other part that blew my mind was those like titanium drive shafts.
Yeah, we run them now. They're expensive, geez.
Yeah, what isn't though, to be fair?
Yeah, you're right. Especially in this day and age. I actually priced up our rollers the other day, and then nearly $80,000 without a motor, and it's just ridiculous. It's hard when you crash. You cringe because you think, oh, there goes $20,000 or there goes $30,000 or whatever.
Yeah, I spoke to, I don't want to name him, but yeah, one sprint car driver that I've spoken to said the cheapest crash he's ever had was $12,000.
Yeah,
that was the cheapest one he's ever had.
Yeah, no, he's definitely,
and he'd probably put secondhand parts on, and
he's not bullshitting you.
Nah. So if you had to sell yourself to someone, and you could say, as a crew chief, what do you think your strength is?
Good question. I never really thought about that.
Like, yeah.
Strength.
Your one wood. I don't know if you know golf or anything like that. It's the terminology. Just like the club that you go to get yourself out of the trouble every time you know you're going to miss it. What's your best attribute?
Probably slick racetracks. I'd like to say that's I think that's where we're good on. Usually when it's heavy and hooked up, we're not that good. But I really like when racetracks go slick and slow and technical, and you can talk to your driver and tell them to get on their wing, and you can actually work on these cars, because it's really hard to tame 950 horsepower on a slick racetrack. I really like when you can dull your motors and take power out of your motors and tighten your race cars up, and you try fine grip. I'd probably say that's my strength. I think we're pretty good on a slick racetrack at Kwinana, and that's probably my favorite part of racing, mate. Is when that's nice slick racetrack that goes slow and technical. The driver's got to use both their feet. You got to take power out of the motor. You got to stand your wing up and just try to find as much grip as you can.
I don't think people understand, and I still probably don't either, how it's like when the track's slick, that's when you find everything out. Who can drive, who can set a car up. Like that's like the ultimate tester, isn't it, when a track goes slick?
It definitely separates the good drivers and the bad drivers. I mean, not saying anyone can go out there and hold it flat, but we call it hero dirt when it's fast, because all them drivers can hold it wide open and steer it, but when you got to use both your feet and actually finesse it, and a lot of people don't realize, but when the racetracks go slick, the drivers aren't wide open at all. They half throttle, using their throttle, getting out of the throttle. Just sliding up to the dirt, and you obviously see it at Perth a lot where they're banging off the wall and just trying to get every bit of moisture they can out of the racetrack.
And then one thing so just to go back to that, I actually was like wondering if you would say qualifying, because you guys seem to be right there for the last year. I remember, I think J-Mac, when he came on the state title night, I think he went out late, and like the times and the times were no good. Everyone seemed to drop off, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. He's going to start like a little bit back, and he's going to be coming through the field, and then he quick time.
Actually, that was my first win as a crew chief, that race there. And I really like working with James. Him would get on really well. And I remember saying, oh, what number you pull? Because, obviously what number you pull is a pretty big thing in sprint car racing. Obviously, earlier the number, the better. And he said, you wouldn't believe it, I pulled the last number. I was like, well, swearing. And obviously there was a lot of pressure on us that weekend. And yeah, I remember the same as you, mate. The track started to go away and get slow. And I remember leaning in saying to James, we're in a bit of trouble here. And he goes, nah, we're fine. Like, it's just the type of person he is, And yeah, I think the first lap was second quick, and then he went out second lap and
That was phenomenal that night. I just remember, I think him and James Inglis were battling out the front in that feature, and J-Mac was literally using the wall for grip.
Yeah.
And I remember I was with the fellas from here, actually. We were watching on the fence, and he'd come past, and then we'd just give each other like this worst look, like, what is he doing? Like, our drivers are phenomenal, and you could just see there's just a difference. There's levels, and him on that wall was phenomenal. We're talking like 10 centimetres.
Yeah, obviously I'm going to be biased, but in my opinion, he's the best in the world, mate. You realise that when you work alongside him, just the way he thinks and how slow it is for him. He can break a lap down into 20 different things, where most drivers are out there just driving a sprint car.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But
hanging on.
When you speak to James, he knows exactly what he's doing, and he actually races. He races at like 70%, and you can see that. And I remember my crew guy saying to me halfway through the race, he's like, "Oh, we're in a bit of trouble there. Like, James Inglis is faster than us." And I was like, "Just wait for it. Like he's just controlling the tempo and just controlling the race. And then when he needs to get up and get after it, he'll get after it." And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because in that race, in the WA state title, it just looked like he was just figuring some stuff out, just having a look around. Like, he's driving a 900 horsepower sprint car against the wall, and he just looks like he was just having a look around and just seeing what was what and where I can go. And yeah, for 99% of the world, like, you would just be hanging on for dear life, and he's just, oh, can I be like 5 centimetres lower? Can I be 10 centimetres higher? Like, crazy.
We actually had a left rear bleeder go bad that night too, so I think our left rear tyre was at like 30 pound after the race, and I think he's the only driver that could handle that. And I remember him saying to me after the race, he's like, "Gee, I'm left rear up," and I'm like, "Oh, that's probably why."
Yeah.
But no, he's the type of talent that can overcome that, and sit his left rear down and drive around it.
And he's back, so it's just the level of excitement. One of my questions later on is like, and what I always think about is when you're involved in it so heavily like you are, I always wonder if you get that same level of excitement as like maybe when you're a 14-year-old kid sitting on the hill with granddad. Like, if you heard, I'm not sure who would have been back then, but, X name was coming back, you're just like, oh my God. But I don't know if that is still what you're like when the big names come back.
Probably for him it's like that, because he's obviously a mate of mine. I get on with him so well, but usually when the big names get announced, I'm thinking, oh, it's another driver you got to try and beat.
Yeah, I suppose it's competition for you.
No,
you're not like, oh, what a spectacle.
It's good. Like last year when we had that race against Rico and Brad, I actually just sat back and watched and thought, this is special. I haven't really done that since I kind of started, but that was probably a time where I just thought, wow, this is really special what these guys are doing right now. And I think I was a fan for that race. I can't even really remember Callum coming in saying, "Oh, how's that car?" And I said, "Man, I didn't even watch that car. I was just watching you guys race." Like that was insane.
Yeah, I was that. You're holding your breath, like.
Yeah, I don't think I breathed the whole race. I remember I was panting after the race and I was wore out, and I remember Carl saying to me, "Why are you so wore out from?" I was like, "I don't think I breathed for the last 15 laps." It felt like I was in the car with him, telling him, "Oh, slide this here," or "Cover yourself here," or "No, hold off here." Like, yeah, that was crazy. Mate,
sometimes I am so embarrassed of myself. I push with my right foot and brake like when I'm watching. I just feel like an absolute idiot, but like I'm so involved when I'm watching. That race is awesome, and it probably is his best race. One of the other best races I reckon he had was the Aussie title last year. He come from deep and he was just running this line like through 4. It'd be like he'd like slide himself every time through 3 and 4, and he come from deep. Do you remember what he started at that Aussie title?
No, I don't, but I think what impressed me the most about that race too, mate, was the Wednesday before he had that big crash, and that was a monster. Actually, I remember going up to him. I walked down the track just because I was genuinely concerned about him. I was like, that's as big as they come, you know what I mean? And he had tears coming out of his eyes just because it was that much of a bell ringer.
Yeah.
And he was lucky enough to get medical clearance. I don't know how he got it between me and you, but
just an adrenaline dump too when you get that upset, like your body's trying to protect itself, and then you realise you're okay, and all those chemicals got to leave your body somehow.
There's footage of him laying down in the mule, like the chaplain's mule after the race, and he was just after the crash, and he was just exhausted. But obviously, when your body goes through that, does some funny things. But yeah, just his ability to bounce back, and even the heat races, like we had tough heat races that whole weekend. I think we had McEwen, Veal, and Goodyear in one of our heats. Like, it was tough, but his ability to kind of just brush aside who he's racing, and I think we started behind Lockie and Veal in a heat. We actually passed them both, and I thought, he's on this weekend. Like, and I could tell his head was in the right place the whole weekend. That was another good race of his, and like you said, probably his second best race I've ever watched him race.
Yeah, just similar to what J-Mac, it just looked like in traffic, breakneck speed, flying around, and they're just figuring things out still. Like, if you can go down in the middle of the track, it's different. They're faster, it's more intense, and then you think, I could not drive anywhere near that pace on my own. Those guys are flying and racing, looking who's coming up. Like, so they're not just driving. It's a phenomenal skill set that they have, and when the best drivers do it, it's why it stands out. Like, yeah, I just remember that him sliding through from like low to high, and he was just getting everyone, and it was no one else was running that line. He's just figured it out, and he was just clicking them off. And then the crowd sent that Callum's corner, I got to do. And I love that. That adds such a different dynamic than I've ever seen anywhere at Speedway, anywhere, for one particular driver. It's good for him, but then the other drivers, just give them a little bit more, because they'd be like, fucking Callum's corner. He's getting the air horns. Like, fuck that. I'm not letting him win. So like it would make everyone raise their bar a bit. Is that pretty awesome to see that?
No, it's definitely really cool. I mean, obviously working with James, he had a lot of fans too, but then coming and racing with Callum, you're like, well, this guy's got fans that you wouldn't even think he'd have. And yeah, I've never seen anything like it. The amount of merchandise he sells, and like you say, the Turn 1 fans with their horns, it's next level, mate. But it's without them fans, we don't race. You know what I mean? They're the people that make the tracks go and make us go. So it's really cool.
Yeah. You've obviously done every event here in WA. What would you say is like the event that you not necessarily want to win, but what's your favourite event that they have here in WA?
In WA, mate, obviously the Speed Week deals were cool against the American drivers, but probably the King of the Wings coming up this weekend. I think that's kind of a race I've always remembered as a kid, and the Cricky Boys too. There's a few good races here in WA actually, but yeah, probably the King of the Wings is probably my favourite WA race. But favourite Australian race would definitely have to be the Classic, and it's definitely the one I want to win, mate. That's at the top of my bucket list.
That's the race, hey, for everyone?
Oh, I don't know if it's a race for everyone, but it's definitely the race for me. In my opinion, it's the Knoxville Nationals of Australia. It's the biggest race in Australia.
And they've got a new surface that looks pretty sick. The race on the weekend, pretty good feedback from it. Everyone seemed to be really, really happy with how it performed.
Yeah, it looked really cool. I think Jock come from 6th or 8th to win, and yeah, it actually looked like it slowed down and got technical. Obviously, the last 3 or 4 years, it kind of hasn't done that. It's gone from being hooked up 10-second laps to laying rubber like that.
Yeah,
I mean, so it's good that they got that sorted, and hopefully the Classic this year is a good deal.
You touched on it just earlier. How often do you actually get to enjoy a race? Because obviously Callum's in it. What do you feel when you're watching him? Is there any point where you get to enjoy it? Are you just stressing about the car the whole time? What does your emotions go through?
Probably be honest, mate. Not very often do I get to really enjoy a race. I'm kind of, as a crew chief, you're always thinking, you're always watching your car. What's it doing? What's he doing? Why are we bad at the moment? Why are we good at the moment? You know what I mean? You always you don't really have time to just watch the race. You're always, like I said, watching what your car's doing, watching what he's doing. So, not very often. It's more after the race. After a win is usually when I kind of just sit back and think, oh, well, that was cool. But even after a win or after a loss, you're always thinking. As much as it kind of sucks, you take it home with you. You dream about it. You sit in the toilet, you're in the shower, you're always thinking about how can we be better,
Should I have done this? Should I have done that? What if we did this?
Yep, exactly.
And how much feedback would like Callum give you? Is it fully just he gets out, says, I feel this, and then it's up to you?
Well, when I first started with him, mate, he was terrible.
Yeah.
He was honestly, and he'll admit that, he was he could get out and be like, man, I don't even know. But it's a good thing too, because, you know, they just get in and pound it. But no, he's come a long way in the last 2 years, and his feedback's starting to get a lot better. He's starting to get a lot better engine-wise. Like he can tell me, oh, we've got too much power. You know, we need to start taming this thing down. Or he can say, oh, I'm a bit out of the racetrack. You know, he's getting better, and you can see that he's obviously using his wing a lot more now and starting to think a lot more when he's racing. So he's getting better with it.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to that thing we spoke about, how there's just levels to the drivers. Like, I'm assuming when he wasn't giving great feedback, it just took everything he had to get around the track fast.
Yeah.
But then that next level is then being able to maintain that speed and then start to think about what is the car doing, and then probably what do we need to do to get it going better.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's, like I said before, it's just, you know, the good drivers, I think it's really slow for them. You know what I mean? They get to think about, like I was talking about James before, you know, when it's slow for them, they think a lot more. And, you know, there's only 4 things a driver has: the throttle, the brake, the wing ram, and the steering wheel. So, you know, trying to get them to use their wing is a big thing too. And yeah, just when it slows down for them, that's when you can tell the good drivers. Like I remember one time we were racing in an Albany World Series, and Brooke Tatnall broke a throttle rod and actually qualified using his hand on the bell crank, like throttling it with his hand in quick time. And I thought, that's next level, but it's obviously because he's been doing it so long and everything's so slow. And
What, one hand on the wheel, one hand on the throttle?
on the throttle, 100%. And actually,
Like an amputee.
actually quick timed with it. And I just thought, wow, that obviously that's what it takes to be a good driver. You know, you got to be always thinking, and it's got to be able to slow down enough for you.
And then that actually segues into my next little thing. It's just laps, because I don't think people understand and how hectic speedway racing is, but then throw in the fact that it's not like you can just have a track in your backyard. Like you can't even start your engines without like having land available to do it, or the starter or whatever. So the only time you ever get to drive them is on the track, really, and laps. So you went to America this off season with Callum. Just what's say 2 or 3 things that you learnt over there?
I don't know if there's 2 or 3. There's probably a million things, mate. I was over there for a long time, so I probably couldn't pick 2 or 3. But obviously, you know, just talking to people over there and just watching and like I said, speaking to the right people, you know, you just pick up things, and you just watch the good crew chiefs and the good drivers. And obviously I was fortunate enough to work with people like Casey Kane and alongside Brad and Eric, and just people that have done it forever and have been so successful in the sport. You just, you know, you pick up little things. I think a big thing that I learned was you don't need 900 horsepower with these cars. You know what I mean? A lot of the time over there, they're constantly detuning their engines and trying to control the wheels from spinning, you know, and try to keep the wheels underneath you. I think that's probably the biggest thing I learned. And another big thing I learned was probably to, you know, to have an open mind. You know, there's no real right or wrong way to do this. You know what I mean? I think before I went, I was just in one mind, like what I was doing is the only way to do things, and the setup we run is the only setup you need to run. But when I went there, I kind of learned, you know, there's more than one way to skin a cat. You know what I mean? You just got to be really open-minded, and, you know, if you think your car needs it, just do it. You know what I mean? And you know, you always got to be changed, you know, keeping on top of the racetrack, because the racetrack changes so quickly, and that's the biggest thing at the end of the day. We're all racing the racetrack. So
Yeah, I always hear in interviews and stuff when people say, oh, we threw something wild at the car, or I would just love someone, and not intricate details, obviously, but when they give those interviews to go, we did this with the suspension. We've never done anything like it, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
Like, or it did work. Or just some more details in relation to what they're actually doing to the car. Because I think if the fans are educated more, it just gives them the ability to get like deeper involved and have a more full and wholesome understanding of what's going on. And then you can, you know, it helps people just love the sport more and get involved. So that's awesome. And just so you're with, obviously, Monty Motorsports over here, they're one of the best. Then Callum Williamson says he's one of the best. And then, like you said, you went to Casey Kane Racing and helped them out. what's the difference in standard in cars between Australia and America?
Look, mate, I wouldn't say there's not too much different. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, there's still sprint cars, and I'd even go as far as saying our stuff in WA is almost as nice as their stuff over there, if not nicer. You know what I mean? It's just the drivers, like you said. Go back to you saying, well, it's all about laps, and them drivers race 90 to 100 times a year, and them crew chiefs get to race 90 to 100 times a year, and you know what I mean? That they're the best in the sport, and that's why, because they race so much and they're always thinking, and they're always trying to be better. I mean, they don't settle for just a lot of the crew chiefs you see, they'll win a race and they're still trying to be better. They never settle. So I think that's the biggest thing over there, is just them being able to race so much. And you obviously see it when Brad and Rico and that come here, they whip their asses.
Yeah, they're just so comfortable. Hey?
Yeah, exactly. And our drivers have only raced 4 or 5 times for the seasons, and them guys have come off racing 90, 95 times. And another big thing is, I think they race at so many different racetracks. And every racetrack's different over there. They do different things, and that's one thing I learned over there, is every night's different. You know what I mean? Like you can suck one night and you got 2 days to get over it, and you're racing at a whole different place and it's a whole different deal. And you know what I mean? You just got to keep adapting and keep working at your stuff.
Yeah, because like you said, they race, say, 80 times a year and probably 60 tracks.
Yeah.
Do you reckon 50% of the field at the Maddington Toyota Sprint Car Series would have driven on 2 tracks, Bunbury and Motorplex?
I'd definitely say so, mate. And it's kind of harder. I mean, we obviously, in my opinion, the Motorplex is the best venue in the country, and it's probably my favourite racetrack. But it's kind of hard because it's the biggest racetrack in Australia, and I think it is the widest, so it kind of races different everywhere else. And I think that's where a lot of our drivers struggle, because these guys come from over east who race in small bull rings where things happen a lot quicker at them smaller bull rings, and you just race differently. And that's why I think our guys get caught out a little bit. It's because they only race at 2 different racetracks, and not saying our racetracks are predictable, but they're probably more predictable than bull rings and tighter racetracks. And so I think you're definitely right. I'd say probably 50% have only raced at the 2 tracks.
And yeah, it's from the outside looking in, it seems easier to adapt going from a small track to a big track. And then for our drivers coming from the Motorplex to go anywhere else, it just seems that, like you said, everything's so much quicker. Whereas these other guys are coming here and they've got more time to react. They've got more time to set up a corner. And so it would be difficult for the guys that have only driven on Bunbury in the Motorplex. But then, on the other hand, they're extremely lucky that they're in one of the best facilities in the world, week in, week out, one of the best series in the world. Gavin Myger on the guide, just even like the social media stuff they put out is phenomenal.
Yeah, it is. Gav's done such a phenomenal job with, in the last 3 to 5 years, I think he's stepped it up and took it to the next level. And he's actually got a really good team. There's a lot of young kids that help him, and it's really good going around the pits and seeing all the young officials, and it makes you feel fresh, makes you feel motivated.
Well, everyone wants to be there.
Everyone wants to be there, yeah, mate. And Gav's really, really appreciative, and comes around and thanks everyone for coming. But yeah, going back to the smaller track thing, I wish we raced on smaller tracks. I think that's where a lot of our guys kind of struggle. When we go over east, I know we struggle over east on the smaller tracks, definitely, and that's because I don't get enough races on smaller tracks, and Callum doesn't get enough races.
And it's just laps.
It's just laps, and the same thing happens in America. Obviously, Pennsylvania is known as a state with bigger racetracks, and you look at 90% of the good drivers in America come from California, where it's little bull rings hooked up, and where you don't even have time to pull a tear off.
Yeah. What about Tolma? Are you guys heading over that way at all, or did you see that?
Mate, I really want to race there. It's kind of unfortunate that our Speed Week falls onto the same time as their first race, but I've seen what they've been. I've kind of been keeping up to date with what they've been doing, and it seems really, really cool. I watched the practice from there, and yeah, Peevely's probably my favorite place in the world. I've never actually raced there, but watching it, it's unreal. That Ironman race they do there with 55 laps is probably my favorite race of the year, and seeing that they're bringing that identical track to Australia it's going to be really cool, mate. I can't wait to race there.
So with that, the track record is broken on the first round here. I think the top speed was about 142 k's an hour. And then there's a copper there, Thomas Speedway, that had his radar out, and Veal was doing like 164 k's an hour.
I think that's probably because of the banking. I've never been to Peevely, but everyone that tells me that's been there, the banking is just wild. You can hardly walk up, and I'd probably say that's why, mate. The banking obviously creates such speed and obviously creates good racing.
So that'd have to be the fastest track, do you think?
I think that's it. If that's accurate, then yeah, it'd probably have to be, yeah, mate.
The radar looked a little old, but it looked like that. They were guessing about 170.
I'm not questioning it, but if that's the case, it definitely probably has to be the fastest.
Yeah, jump on Wade. I don't know if it's Ornger. Yeah, so he did like a live stream, and he obviously knew the fella, and they stood there right at the entrance into 3, I think it was, and getting them coming down the straight, and you could tell they were flying. Jamie Veal I think he was about 5-6 k's an hour faster than anyone else, but
I have questioned a few cop radars in my time though, so not going to say
fair
it's
enough
the most
too.
accurate thing.
No. So do you have a 5-year plan of what you want to do or where you want to go, or is it just year by year?
Not really, mate. I wouldn't say I have a plan. I just want to keep racing, and I just want to win races, mate. That's my biggest thing. I just want to keep winning, and I think obviously you need to keep going to America if you want to be if you want to be good in this sport. You need to keep going over there and staying up to date, because this sport changes so quickly. You know what I mean? It's unreal how quick stuff changes. You can, you see that with some older drivers that struggle these days, just because the sport develops and stuff changes in an instant. So I think you need to keep going to America, and that's kind of my plan. I've been fortunate enough to have a few phone calls since leaving, and obviously people like Casey and that still message me, which is really cool. And just probably just keep going over there and keep racing with Callum in the meantime. I really enjoy racing with him and his family, so I really want to turn him into the best he can be, and I really want him to succeed in the sport as much as he wants me to succeed too. So
that's awesome.
Keep winning races, mate.
Because I remember watching an interview with Callum. He said you guys are going to be sending your own equipment over next year. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the plan at the moment, mate. I mean, I'm not sure if that's 100% at this time, but that's definitely the plan. I want him to keep going over there and keep getting laps, and that's like he keeps coming back to that, just laps and laps and laps. And obviously racing in America is the next level, and I think to be a good driver, take Ryan Newton, for example. I mean,
yeah,
he's stepped it up to the next level, and that's, in my opinion, that's all because of the racing he's been doing in America. So yeah, that's the plan, mate, to go over there. I don't know how long we'll go for and where we'll race, but I think if I can go over there and do a little bit of racing with him, and then go do something else with obviously a more professional team and an outlaw or a high limit team, that'd be really cool too.
And how much of a difference do you think it's going to make running your own gear that you know and that you have control of? And is that going to make a massive difference, or is it just a little bit easier?
Oh, it definitely make a difference, mate. Obviously learn a lot more, with your own stuff, and it's kind of hard, the deal that we were in last year, because they already had their own crew and they're already set up. So if we go over and do our own stuff, we're obviously going to learn off each other and just learn with each other. So yeah, it will make a massive difference.
Yeah. So you've been around the sport a fair while. Is there, at the moment, in how it's running, is there anything that you would like to change? Is there a rule? Is a parts removal, introduction of it, controversial or whatever? Is there something you think that say the American teams get to run that we don't? Or
mate, I could, not to sound like a negative person, but I could probably go on for a video. I don't want to get myself into trouble or anything, but yeah, I think there's there's obviously a lot of stuff we can change, and there's always ways to be better. And I think we're on the right path though. Like the last, probably 3 years ago, I'd say we're in a bit more trouble. You know what I mean? Just obviously after COVID and that kind of ruined a lot of things. But yeah, there is some stuff I'd like to be changed. I mean, I think we have some silly rules over here that don't really matter, in my opinion. You know what I mean? I think our cars are pretty safe over here. Our tracks are pretty safe. You know what I mean? So there is some stuff that I would like to be changed, and just probably not be so stuck in our old ways. I feel like there's a lot of old people in the sport that kind of stuck in their ways, and it's hard to get them out of that. But yeah, there's probably a little bit.
That's one thing that I have learnt. We race dirt cars around a dirt track, but there is 1,000 rules to driving a car in a circle.
Yeah, you're definitely right there, mate. We've got some silly rules, and then we've got a lot of silly stuff, but we also do a lot of good stuff. And in my opinion, it's the best racing in the world. It's the best sport in the world. So we must be doing something right.
Back to when I was just saying, like, does stuff become normal? One of my favourite things, and I've wasted so many times on the big events, there's this guy that parks out the front of the tracks and films the trailers going in. I watch that a lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes I need to check myself. Does it become normal getting to walk into, like, the most beautiful trailers with all the stuff? That's just work for you.
Yeah, I guess it does become normal, mate. I kind of don't really know any different. Like I said, I kind of landed on my feet and was obviously, when I worked for Monty Motorsports at the time, they were probably the most successful team in Australia. So I guess it is kind of the norm for me, mate. But, you know, you never take, you know, you always got to be appreciative of where you're at, and, you know, you're lucky to be fortunate where you're at, and just, always be appreciative of the people that provide you with them things, and the car owners. I feel like car owners don't get enough credit in our sport. I mean, without them, we have no racing, and they're the ones that put up all the money, and it's like we said before, it's not cheap and it's getting more expensive. So
yeah, for sure. If people truly knew the numbers, and I watched that video, Brad Jones Racing put it up with Kenny Mack, just talking about sprint car engines the other week.
Yeah.
And just like the fact you have to allow $2,000 a night in engine repairs.
Yeah, it's actually probably even more than that, in my opinion, mate. It's ridiculous. In our tyres, man, I think we're paying $650 for a right rear these days. It could be more, I'm not sure, but it's really hard in my position because I'm spending all someone else's money, and I look at all the figures and I think, wow, do we really need that? But we do need it because we want to go racing.
And you guys are racing for like tenths of a second.
Yeah.
And that is the difference between a new and old tyre.
No, you're right. You're exactly right, mate. Obviously, after coming back from America, I've seen a lot of new parts and just stuff that people are running that's new. And I thought, you know, we need to get that because it's going to make our racing better. But then you look at the price of some things and you think, wow, do we really need it? But when you're racing for them tenths of seconds, and then, you know, it could be the difference between quick time and the difference between second and first. And, you know, like I said, we're always trying to find that edge.
Yeah, it seems crazy. So, yeah, I think we've spoken about it before, but all races within Australia, the Classic's the one that you want to get.
Definitely, mate. The Classic's always been I've been lucky to win one as a crew guy, but just seeing the emotion when people win that race, and it's just, obviously I'd like to win some big races in America, but you know, you got to set realistic goals and just take it step by step. But yeah, the Classic is, if I can win that race someday, I'll be pumped.
Who did you win that one with?
I won it with Monty's in 2020 with James.
Yep.
Yeah, and just seeing the emotion from James and Buzz and everyone after that race, it's pretty special, mate. It's a pretty special feeling. Working hard, it's not easy to, you know, it's obviously a 3-day event, and you got to be good at all facets of the night. I mean, you got to be good in qualifying, you got to be good in your heat races, and I know the format's changed now, but back then there was a third heat race in the last night, and that was crucial. You had to be good in that last heat race, and it's really difficult to win that race, mate.
I spoke about it in the first episode that we did, but these races are so difficult to win because if you make one mistake, you're done.
Yeah.
Like the Classic, you can't catch back up. Even in here in the domestic series, just here, like if you stuff up qualifying, like not many people, I would say, Kingshot, Callum, at the moment, probably only those two I would, even out of the top 5, I think could win. Like I don't know if you can come from 10th to win still. Like, so those races to win them are just, and that's mistake free from the 14-year-old kid washing it. Like he's not knocked anything. Like no one can make a mistake the whole week.
You're 100% right, mate. I mean, go back to the Classic, the last Classic I ran with Callum. We were leading our first heat race, and he missed the bottom. He was actually doing a really good job, and he missed the bottom one lap, and Brock Ziafos got underneath us and passed us. And that was the difference between us starting pole of our prelim night, or I think we started third. And we actually got involved in a crash because the guy in front of us accidentally chopped us. And I remember...
Was that Eagle?
No, it was Justin Peck.
Yep.
And I remember saying to Callum, I was like, if we didn't miss that bottom in that heat race, he made that one mistake.
But that's what it's like now, isn't it? With the
100%
level of competition, he stuffed up one corner out of 16 corners you'd make in a heat race, and that's it.
And the same thing in that big race he had with Rico and Brad. I mean, he went to slide a lap car and probably just went half a lap too early, and that it cost him the race. And once them guys pass you, it's hard to pass them back. And obviously, the harder the competition gets, you go from being able to make 3 mistakes a race to not being able to make any. It's just how it is.
So the cars in the off pole, say, the track's gone completely slick. You can only make one change to the car. So like only suspension, only stagger. What's the one change you're going for?
Probably putting the wing in the back post. I think that's a big thing, being able to get your wing over the back of the car. And I know when I do that with Callum a lot, he notices it, and just either that or, obviously lowering the back of your car or moving your wheelie and just stuff like that, tuning on your shocks, taking power out of the motor, all that stuff. But yeah, probably moving the wing back into the back post. I think that makes the biggest thing with Callum, and he likes getting on his wing. So
yeah, that's an epic answer. I had no idea that was even a thing, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, that's a big thing with him anyway.
And when you were saying before it's hard to get a driver to use his wing, that's obviously with that hydraulic ram. Do they forget about it? Do they not want to touch it?
Like I said before, mate, I think it's just obviously the good drivers, it's really slow for them, so they have time to think about that. But 90% of the drivers in the field don't think about that stuff and are just driving a sprint car out there. I remember when I first started with Callum, I kept drilling that into his head. Use your wing, it's your friend. Because at the end of the day, once the fuel load comes off in a 30-lap race and the track's getting slicker and it's getting more technical, you want more grip at the end of the race, so why not use it? It's there. It's there for a reason.
And we spoke about it a little bit earlier, like launching into that next level as a thing, and we sort of have covered it. But do you think? My question is how much of an advantage is it for someone to have a crew chief versus like a driver crew chief? But do you reckon that anyone could really contest for this series here in Perth doing it themselves, or is it's just gone to another level?
Maybe for someone like Brad or Rico who knows so much and obviously race 100 times a year, they kind of know what their cars need, and probably someone like them, they probably could, but nah, not really, mate. You need people that know stuff about these cars, and there's a lot of really good crew chiefs in Australia. Hayden Kendrick, who works for Jock Goodyear, he's a really good crew chief, and I'm pretty sure Jock could say he couldn't do it without him. And we have Matt Cochran, he's a really good crew chief over here in WA, and I can guarantee you Dane couldn't do it without him. You know what I mean? It's just, they're definitely important. Yeah, I think you definitely need a full-time guy that's always thinking about this stuff and always trying to be better.
Is it because, like, obviously the car setup and that would be all a lot easier, but you just want these drivers thinking about racing? Is that, how much is that involved? Like, because Callum can just come back and say it's doing this.
Yeah,
he doesn't then have to think, what do I need to do? Then throw the helmet in the trailer, get the tools out. Like, it must just be such an advantage for those boys to go, right, I need this, I'm going to go look at the track or whatever. And not just knowing that it's done, but then having the trust in yourself, in all the other lads that do it, that it's going to be done. Like, they're up against the wall as soon as they get back out there. Like, the advantage of knowing you've got a good crew chief who's going to make the right decision, who's going to set the car up, and then you can just focus on driving, that'd be a massive advantage.
Yeah, definitely, mate. And I think you can use James Inglis as an example for that. When he was in his own car, I wouldn't say he struggled, but he wasn't the greatest. And then he jumps in that Diamond Bay car where they've already got, Steve's the crew chief there, and they've already got their own deal. And he excelled in that car. And it's definitely, it's definitely a big thing. You want your driver just to be thinking about what the track's doing and just racing. Callum will come in, he'll usually tell me something, and I'll tell him, go away and think about it for a bit. And he'll go stand on the fence, and I like to think he's looking at the racetrack. He's probably talking to other drivers, but and then he'll come back and say, I think we need this, I think we need to do that. And then, that's when me and Nathan and Carl can work on it and do it. But yeah, you definitely want their head in the right space and them to just be thinking about racing and not working on the car.
When you're working on those cars, it's obviously one of the biggest draw cards, if not the biggest draw card for me about the Motorplex, is that the crowd can come into the pits mid-race.
Yeah.
Like, you don't understand how awesome it is until you go to a speedway track where you can't do that.
Yeah.
And then you just got to sit there and watch, and you don't get to get up close. Like, you're like, I just want to get in the pits and have a look at it stuff. Is it ever not daunting, but obviously all eyes on you. Like, you know, you would see it when people do a motor change. There's 40, 50 people like 2 meters from you while you're going absolutely crazy trying to swap stuff out. Does it ever get to you, annoy you, or is it just part of it now for you?
Yeah, well, I'll go back on your question there. I didn't really actually realize, you know, because obviously I grew up just being at Perth. I didn't realize that the crowd couldn't go into these racetracks. And I remember when I was, you know, just started, I probably shouldn't be saying this, but just started on the road with Monty's, and I was 14 or 15, whatever. And the tracks over east, you need your Speedway Australia license to be able to get in the pits. And I remember I used to, you know, hiding in the trailer to get in the thing, and then James would give me his wristband, or Buzz would get 2 wristbands just for me to be able to, you know, to be in the pits. And I didn't really realize that until you go over to the other side of the country. And yeah, I think it's a really good thing that they do over here. Obviously their pits are suitable enough for it. You know, I mean, that, you know, it's big enough and it's safe enough, and we got a hot area where cars can switch off and that. But is it daunting? Probably not. It probably is if you're changing a motor and people are getting in the way, you know, but people are pretty good about it. Usually they keep their distance, and at the end of the day, without them fans, you know, we don't sell merchandise, and you always just got to have that in the back of your mind that, you know, we need them fans more than they need us.
So one of the things that I love and what got me, I'm from Albany, or initially I was from Newman, and there used to be a big sprint car series there, maybe late 90s or something like that. There was like, I think it might have been World Series, but I'm not sure. But that got me into it. And then the World Series down in Albany, like, as just a general like busted ass fan, like no one's coming down from up north. Like, Speedway's huge all around WA, and the exposure to the sprint cars is like, people think they know Speedway, but then sprint cars are just a different sport. And that exposure that everyone gets from when the World Series used to come around and go to different tracks, Esperance, Kalgoorlie, things like that, it just broadens the horizons of the fan base and people's knowledge and want of the sport. I personally would love to see the World Series come back, but my first question is, say, how much more expensive would it be as a team like yourself to run a national series versus what you would spend here? Is it a huge difference? Is it undoable, or is it not that much more?
Oh, it's definitely a lot more, mate, but I'm with you. I'd definitely love to see World Series come back. I mean, that's probably the biggest thing that I want us to do in this sport, in this country, is to have a national touring series. I think you need one, you know what I mean? I think for people like, you know, good drivers like Jock and Lockie McHugh, and, you know, they need to be able to do this for a living. They're talented enough, and I think we need a national touring series for them to be able to do that. And man, there's nothing I miss more than going to shitty racetracks in the middle of nowhere like Whyalla and just Maryborough, just in the middle, you know, and obviously not the best places, but they would race really cool, and, you know, there'd be so many fans there, and you'd be in the middle of nowhere. You'd be driving through the desert, and all of a sudden you hit a racetrack, you hit a small town. But I miss that so much, and I really want World Series to come back. And yes, it would cost a lot more, but I know for a fact that Callum would want to do that. You know, I mean, I think they could get 16, 20 teams very easily. You know, I mean, I think there's a lot of people that miss it, and it's kind of sucks that all that history and, you know, all them statistics have kind of just faded away because it's gone. But yeah, I really want that to come back, mate, definitely.
Yeah, because if you just look at this Napa 500 field, like, imagine that if that's a series. Yeah. Like, that is the people that are coming for that would just be going crazy. And I guess what I would ponder is it would be more expensive, but if you're racing, say, 2 times a week, like they can race for 10 grand here at Maddington Toyota, like that has to be 25, 30 grand. Yeah. And then the money, and they're doing it every night. Like, I think that there'd be the potential for people to earn an actual income. I remember seeing a statistic with Jock Goodger. I think he made just like 250 grand maybe last year in prize money, just, you know, hitting money races here and there. If it was a genuine World Series, there would be a number of drivers there that are doing that. That's more shirts for sale. Like, there's a bigger audience for the drivers. Like, if Callum's this popular here in Perth, like, that translates everywhere. What if he's selling those shirts at every track across Australia? Like, and then my other thought that I always think is we spoke about it before, is that it's not just the driver. Like, I wonder what sort of value would that series add for crew chiefs like yourself? Like, I would imagine to sell yourself to a team, you at the moment you go, well, we run this in the Maddington Toyota series. But what if you could then have on your resume, this is what we run in a national series, and then the value that it adds to car owners, to crew chiefs, to drivers. I just think, I don't know how it's not a good, and obviously there's things behind it, but I guess talk about what you think that would do for your skill set, your knowledge base, and then obviously ultimately your resume going forward.
Yeah, you're definitely right, mate. I think it goes back to what we were saying about, we only get to race on really 2 to 3 tracks for most of the year. I think when, like a national touring series, I think we used to hit 18 to 20 races back in World Series, and you race on 12, 15 different tracks. And it's obviously going to extend your knowledge and, make your driver better because he's got to race on different stuff. And I think you can look at the high limit deal, what Brad and Kyle have done there. And, their racing had some absolute dumps, but it's the same thing again. They're making money. They're racing for more money. They're hitting maybe races 5 times a week, like just doing as much racing as they can. And like you say, I think if we had a national touring series that raced at all these different tracks, it would only make everyone better. It would only make these drivers better. And I actually joke with my mates a lot and saying, I want to start a series up that hits all these country tracks because I know, like you said before, we got Albany, we got Margaret River, Esperance, Pathara, Manjimup, all these, and that's just in WA. There's so many tracks in Victoria which people don't know about, and I was fortunate enough to race at some of them. And places like Moama and Simpson, I thought, man, these tracks are just badass. Like, I wish we got to race at these more often.
I've watched Stephen Haitley. He's like a wingless dude. He has a YouTube channel. He races at Simpsons a lot, and he loves it. It's like an egg, hey?
Man, it's cool. Like, going down the back stretch, you go down a hill and like you enter 3 pretty quick, and it's 3 and 4 is the tightest corner in, I'm going to say, Australia. Like, it's insane. But when then 1 and 2 is kind of like not as big as the Motorplex, but it's kind of like that. It's flowy, and you can pound the top. It's really cool. And then, like I said, the other place, Miami, we raced there once. I raced there with Tate Frost once, and yeah, it's. I wouldn't say it's much smaller than the Motorplex. Like, it's big, but no one really knows about it. Man.
Yeah, right.
And Grant Anderson won that race that night. I just thought, wow, this place it was slick to the fence, like rough cushion. It was badass. And then, Mildura, places like that. I just wish we raced them places more. And obviously the Motorplex and Premier Speedway and Murray Bridge and all these tracks are really great, but I think our drivers become a bit one-dimensional at times. And if they had a national series and got the opportunity to race at all these tracks more, it'd be really cool.
Yeah, I do also wonder, like, say once a year it came to Kalgoorlie, Esperance, whatever, like when the Motorplex hosts, one of their blue ribbon events, Marquee Cricket Boys, what does the crowd look like then? If the people in Esperance love it, like they're like, oh, how good was that? There's this huge event coming up, like, let's go. I wonder if you could whet the appetite of the audience and the crowd around the WA area. Like, what does the marquee events then look like? How big are they?
You're definitely right. I mean, going back to one of your questions where you said, what would you like to change? I think one thing we struggle with is putting on race dates that don't fall in line with each other. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why tracks don't work off this high limit deal that Perth got going. I'm pretty sure if Albany or Geraldton or wherever put on a race 2 days after it that paid 5-10 grand to win, they'd get your 40 cars. Like you say, they should all work together and feed off each other, because no different to we're going to this Adelaide race, and I know if Whyalla put on a race on the way home, we'd be hitting that. You know what I mean? They definitely should feed off each other, and the crowd would obviously follow, like you say, and make these marquee events bigger. And I wish they just worked hand in hand a bit more. Like, there's a week break between the classic and the title, and I think someone's actually put a race on, which is really good. But there's opportunity there. You know what I mean? All them teams that are traveling to Warrnambool and that aren't going to go home for 4 days. They're going to stay around. So why wouldn't you put on races between? You're going to get your 40, 50 cars.
Yeah, I wonder if Kalgoorlie could just catch a few guys after high limits heading back over east, or maybe when's the classic? That's the 26th of January.
Yeah, around that time.
Yeah, so catch them on the way through. I don't know, but yeah, you are right. That would be epic, but that's what I would like to see. Like, I loved it when they came to town in Albany. Like, I remember it's a difficult venue to get into the car, but I was like 4 Ks down the road stopped.
Yeah.
Just waiting to get in. And I thought I'd left early. I think gates open at 4:30 and I was there at like 1:30 and I'm 4 Ks deep of cars. Like, people love it. And because it's like the big boys, like you might go to an event here or there, but when the World Series came to town, and then Hall's Haulage is obviously an Albany-based company, so Hall's Motorsports, they were huge, and everyone got around them, Stephen Lyons and Brett Hall and his brother Greg. Greg hates me, but Brett is a good bloke. He's a footy player. Like, everyone got around him, and it was huge for the town.
Hey, I'm telling you, I'm going to say that's the number one thing I miss about being on the road and racing is going to these country towns, and they'd always pack out, and you get the rough country fans, but they were so passionate, and they'd let you know if they didn't like you, and that's what I really miss. And just like I said, driving in the middle of nowhere across the Nullarbor, in deserts, and you rock up to this small country town, and all of a sudden there's a racetrack and there's fans lined up 4 or 5 kilometers, like you say. It's one thing I definitely miss. Obviously you're still going to have your big races at the Motorplex and that, but I think it'd be really cool if these little tracks could put on races, and yeah, it's definitely a thing I miss.
And then the last thing I just want to chat about, it's been released this week, is that the Maddington Toyota Sprint Car Series Crew Chief of the Year. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen that, mate. I think
that's pretty epic.
It's a really cool thing. I think Sean Curran organised that and sponsored the award, and I think
shout out Gold Star Transport.
Yeah, it's really badass of Sean to do that. He obviously does a lot for our sport already, but for him to to think about the crew chiefs, and Sean knows how this, he's been in the sport for a million years. He knows what it's like to bust your ass on these race cars, and it's really good of him to give the crew chiefs, some form of recognition. And I think it's a really cool thing. I think you get flied to the US or something, which would be really cool for a crew chief that, hasn't been over there or something like that. Just the opportunity to do that. It's really cool of Sean to do that.
Yeah, so it's crew chiefs only, no car owner crew chiefs.
Yeah.
And how many you reckon there was? About 8?
I think there's 8 or 9. I think, we got me, Matt, Jono. There's obviously a few more I'm missing.
Jono's got a double chance though, because
Jono has got a double chance.
Yeah, he's got 2 raffle tickets.
He definitely does. And I think Trent's got a full-time crew chief. Cade Mander's got a full-time crew chief. There's a few out there. There's more than you think.
Yeah.
Definitely more than you think.
No, it's also awesome for Sean Curran to just shine a light on it and give the casual fan or someone that's not so involved in the sport to shine a light on what the crew chiefs do and how important it is in terms of these cars getting around the racetrack fast. I think it was awesome, and it's another thing that the series is doing to promote the people from within the sport, to give you a little bit more of a platform to showcase who you are and your skill set, and then and more people are aware of who you are, and it can only be good for the sport. So when that came out, I was actually real stoked, because then I knew you were coming in, so I was like, well, he might be flying to Knoxville.
Hope so, mate. I think I'll be there either way, hopefully.
Yeah, that's true. You'll probably be over there anyway.
Depends. How visa stuff's really hard. That's what a lot of people don't realise, how hard it is with visas, and just making sure you do everything right so you don't get in trouble. But no, definitely plan to go there, mate.
Nah, epic, mate. Yeah, that sort of knocks all the stuff out that I had, but I'm hoping it's almost like a bookmark. This interview is almost like a bookmark that in 5 years' time you can look back on, and we could maybe if we're still going, I don't know how many more we've got in us, but hopefully heaps, but come back in a couple of years' time and review what's happened and then to where you are now. So I appreciate you coming in and being honest, and it's a really good interview. I hope that the people that listen to it enjoy it, and the aim of it is everyone's in the workshop this week getting ready for the race this weekend, and they've got this blaring, and hopefully that it goes pretty well and it goes down good.
No, thank you, mate. I appreciate you inviting me. I think it's a really cool opportunity to talk on something like this. Like I said, there's definitely room in the sport for podcasts like these. I find myself in the workshop a lot, just listening to music, wishing I was listening to podcasts for the Joe Rogan ones or whatever, but I really wish there was more racing ones. So I really appreciate that, mate.
One of the things I'm like, well, if 7+ have it, there's got to be there's podcasts about cornhole.
Yeah.
And like this, So I'm like, surely there's room for one here. And like I said, it's been doing pretty good. So
The open red one that the Outlaws did
Yep.
was really, really cool. And I still find myself today listening to old ones of them and wishing they still did it, but I don't think they do anymore. But
and I've listened to it, and the little nuggets of information that you get, you're like, oh, that's what I love about them. And even for me, like the putting the wing post back, just those little things, like I would never think about. So I'm hoping that some people got a few little nuggets of information here and they love it. And then the last question I have here, so you can't include motorsports or sprint cars. What's your favourite sport?
fishing,
Fishing,
yep.
mate. Do you like boats?
I love boats.
I got a sponsor, Westerberg Marine. You ever heard of him?
No, I haven't, but
Mate, in Albany, genuinely one of the best boat
give
builders in Australia. Yeah, Reese Jones, if you're listening, he doesn't. He told me every time he doesn't listen, so I keep telling everyone, get down there. He'll give you 50% off a boat. Just mention the Work Area podcast.
probably footy too, actually. I probably should say footy. I play footy a lot. So
Yeah,
footy
who you
and
play
fishing.
for?
Lanson.
Oh, yeah, way up north.
Yeah, way up north.
Is that like Mark LaCroix?
He plays for Savannah's.
Savannah. So he's got a Westerberg boat.
He's an opposition of ours.
Yeah, no, he's no good then. Done. All right, thanks for that,
Thanks,
mate.
mate. Thank you.
See ya.